Alright guys, welcome back. I'm Blue Monkey. In today's video, we're going to be doing something that a lot of you have been asking for, and that's going to be a Beast Mastery Hunter guide. And for this video, I decided just to go all out. As the title says, the only BM Hunter guide that you'll ever need. Just about the only thing that I'm not going to cover in this video is like a full detailed best in slot, but I am going to talk about stat priority, I'm going to be talking about trinkets, I'm going to be talking about soulbinds, legendaries, covenants, rotation, playstyle, talents, pets, the whole shebang. And I'm going to do it all in 3 subcategories, and it's going to be PvP, PvE, and solo. So buckle your seatbelts, guys. This video is going to be kind of a long one. I'm going to try to keep it as short as I possibly can. And if you find the information in this video useful, leave me a like down below, is much appreciated. And if you want more useful content just like this every single week, make sure to subscribe, hit that notification bell. Without further ado, let's get right into it. Alright guys, we're going to start off with PvE content. This is going to be our dungeons and our raids. So I think the best place for us to start is with our pets. And just so you know, I will put timestamps in the description of this video for the PvP and the solo sections if you want to go ahead and skip ahead. And I know dungeons and raids are going to vary slightly as far as talents and absolute optimization of your build. But for this guide, I'm going to recommend talents, soulbinds, legendaries, and trinkets that will do you well in both major PvE endgame scenarios. But don't worry, I'll make sure to tell you if there's something important to change for dungeons or raids specifically. So let's quickly brush over our basic 3 pet families. We have Cunning, Ferocity, and Tenacity. Cunning is going to be more mobility focused, giving you plus 8% movement speed, and Master's Call, allowing you to get out of roots and snares. Ferocity is going to be a little bit of offensive and a little bit of defensive utility for you, so you get Predator's Thirst, giving you and your pet 10% passive leech, which is going to help you stay alive as long as you're doing damage. And then the Primal Rage ability increases you and your entire party's haste by 30%. For 40 seconds. And then lastly, Tenacity is more or less your tank style pet. I would say Ferocity is better at tanking in general, but we'll talk about that more in detail in a second. Tenacity gives you plus 5% maximum health, as well as the Survival of the Fittest ability, reducing your damage taken by 20% for 6 seconds. Nice little defensive cooldown there. So as Beast Mastery Hunters, we're going to want to take advantage of exotic pets as much as we possibly can, which is why for raids and dungeons, I do recommend using a Spirit Beast. Now, Spirit Beast did get a massive nerf to the Spearmend ability, so much so that the Ferocity pet family's leech actually outdoes it as far as healing per second. But in a situation where you already have a healer and you already have a tank, and you're probably going to be at 100% health most of the time, it's really a better option to take a pet like a Spirit Beast for that on-command heal in case you find yourself in a pinch. And being in the Tenacity family, it also gives you that Survival of the Fittest ability, like I was saying, reducing all damage you and your pet take by 20% for 6 seconds. It's on a 3-minute cooldown. It's not a super potent defensive, but it's there. You know what I mean? It's there, and I think in the type of content that we're talking about right now, this is probably going to be your best option. Now, with that being said, if you are running a dungeon and nobody on your team has anything like Primal Rage or Bloodlust, it could very well be worth taking a pet in the Ferocity pet family instead. And honestly, for group content, any Ferocity pet will do. But just because you can bring you and your entire team that 30% increased haste for 40 seconds, to really help you DPS that boss down, again, if nobody else in the party has something like that. Now, our talents are more or less going to look something like this. Animal Companion on top, Scent of Blood, Natural Mending, Thrill of the Hunt, Post Haste, Stomp, and Bloodshed. Now, there's a couple modifications that we can make here. First of all, if you are running a Ferocity pet instead of a Spirit Beast, just know that if you take Animal Companion, which allows you to also summon your first pet from your stables, the way this talent basically works is that both of your pets each perform at 60% capacity. But since you have both of them, it results in like a 120% total damage output. But if you're taking a Ferocity pet, remember you get that 10% leech to help you stay alive. With Animal Companion, since your second pet only obeys your kill command, basically you're gonna get a 40% nerf to that leech, thus resulting in you having a lot less survivability. So that's just something to note. Now we're going to take Scent of Blood because overall it's just really going to help your damage rotation. As you know, casting Barb Shot reduces the cooldown on our Bestial Wrath, and Scent of Blood, when you activate Bestial Wrath, it grants you 2 more charges of Barb Shot, so this is just going to help you get to that next Bestial Wrath quicker and help you keep up your frenzy stacks. Natural Mending is just going to be good to reduce the cooldown on your Exhilaration, which is one of the only heals you're going to have except for Spirit Mend if you're taking a Spirit Beast. Thrill of the Hunt is just an overall good increase on your damage. damage, granting you a little bit more critical strike chance. Now we're going to take post haste in case we get rooted or in case we're falling behind on the group and we need a little speed boost. In row 45, stomp is really the only choice, or at least the only choice that makes sense. And then the bottom, you can go one of two ways. You can go bloodshed, which is going to really increase your single target damage output, giving you another bleed, and also increasing the damage your pet does on that bleeding target. So this ability naturally in PvE is going to be more focused on your boss fights. Or you can go Aspect of the Beast, which is just a flat 30% buff to the damage and healing of your pet's abilities. And it also says increases the effectiveness of your Predator's Thirst, Endurance Training, and Pathfinding passives by 50%. Now those are the passives that belong to our pet families that we talked about. So if you're going with Ferocity and you really want to maximize that leash, this is a good talent to take. I'd say that Bloodshed will probably be better for raids, and Aspect of the Beast will be more suited for dungeons. Aspect of the Beast will do well in raids too though. So let's compare the effectiveness of our covenants when we're doing PvE activities. You can see that for raids, Kyrian performs pretty well, Necrolords not so much, Night Fae is excellent, and Venthyr is mediocre. That's going to be just about the same for our Mythic Plus, resulting in Night Fae actually coming out on top. And that's because you get the Wild Spirits ability, which is really essential for getting those big burst AoEs. Like, you can just delete mobs with this ability. So assuming we're going with Night Fae, let's look at our soulbinds. Now, I'm a big advocate for spec your character however you want. You know, at the end of the day, this is a role-playing game. And in my opinion, half of the fun is being able to create a character that feels like a unique member of the world. That being said, if you're looking to optimize, you're going to want to go Night Fae and you're going to want to use Nia. And this is the soulbind path that you're going to want to take. And so our conduits from top to bottom are going to be Spirit Attunement in the Potency slot, Reversal of Fortune in the Finesse slot, Marksman's Advantage in the Endurance slot, and then Resilience of the Hunter in the Endurance slot as well. And what this pathway is generally going to do is give you a boost to your overall survivability and damage output, as well as buffing your wild spirits and allowing you to get a little bit more utility out of your soul shape, your feigned death, as well as your hunter's mark. So for our legendaries in PvE content, Soulforge Embers is gonna come out on top. This is the one where launching a flare into your tar trap causes the tar trap to catch on fire, dealing a pretty significant amount of damage over 12 seconds. It's kind of an interesting playstyle. It's kind of funky. A lot of people think that it feels clunky when you play it. I personally have not crafted this legendary, but another option that you can go for if you want something a little bit more passive, you can get Rylak Stalker's Piercing Fangs. Hopefully I'm saying that right. It says, while Bestial Wrath is active, your pet's critical strike damage dealt is increased by 35%. So this is going to allow your pet to do some massive crits whenever you have Bestial Wrath up. And if you're performing your rotation right, you should have it up a significant amount of time. Now don't worry, I will get into rotation in just a second. Keep in mind that while Soulforge Embers sims the best, it is reliant on the tank keeping the enemies over your flames. If the mob moves, you're not doing any damage, which is why I would personally recommend taking Rylak Stalker's Piercing Fangs. Now, as far as stat priority, as far as gear, this is basically going to be the order that it goes in: agility, haste, crit, mastery, and then versatility, with agility being the most important and versatility being the least important. Now, keep in mind that with the release of Shadowlands, secondary stats have been pretty significantly nerfed. They're not nearly as important as they were in BFA. So in general, the way I like to think about it is that a larger amount of unbalanced stats is going to be better than a smaller amount of balanced stats. In the end, item level is going to be, your main priority because you really just want to max out on that agility. So unless you're already deep endgame and you're trying to really maximize your build and your armor and your stats, I wouldn't worry too much about it, to be completely honest. So let's take a look at a little graph of the best performing trinkets for dungeons and raids. Dreadfire Vessel seems to be performing extremely well. Just gives you a big ol' offensive cooldown, just a fucking slap in the face ability. Now the Inscrutable Quantum Device is a little bit weird because the effect that it has when you press it can do many different things. It does give you a nice boost to your primary stat, which for us would be agility. So passively, it's really good. But I would say in raids, it's a little bit less valuable for that. And then the last one I'll actually talk about is Hateful Chain, which is pretty cool. Basically, when you have a greater health percentage than your enemy, your abilities have a really high chance to do more damage. And when you have a lower health percentage than your enemy, your abilities have a very high chance to heal you, which is pretty cool. It's kind of a duality of purpose, depending on what type of situation you're in and really how much of a pinch you're in. Then you got Memory of Past Sin, Skulker's Wings, blah, 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 blah. So those are going to be your top performers, guys. And so if you like to do Mythic Plus, And if you like to do those heroic and mythic raids, I'm going to recommend to you the enchantments that you're going to want to put on your gear. For cloaks, we have a couple options. We can either do fortified avoidance, fortified speed, or soul vitality. Fortified avoidance and fortified speed are both going to give you a little increase in stamina, as well as respectively giving you an increase in your avoidance and your speed. Now for soul vitality, it's just going to give you a stamina increase, but it's going to give you a little bit more than the first two if you want to just max out on that stamina. For our chest, we want to enchant with eternal stats. For our boots, we want to enchant with eternal agility. And for our ring, we want to enchant with tenet of haste. Now for our weapon, this one's kind of cool. We're going to use the infragreen reflex sight. What it does is gives you a chance while you're doing damage to increase your haste by a significant portion for 12 seconds. And again, we cannot overlook those haste boosts. This is going to be really important for increasing your overall damage output, not only by reducing the time between your auto shots, but also by reducing your global cooldown time. Now anything with a gem slot, you're just going to want to throw in a quick jewel cluster, again for that increase in haste. That's going to be your best option for this type of content. So let's move on to the rotation now. So I think the best way to go ahead and show you guys this rotation is to break it down into two sections, which is going to be single target and AoE. So we'll start with single target. Now, a couple things you want to keep in mind. We have Scent of Blood, okay? So you don't want to cast your Bestial Wrath when you already have 2 charges of Barb Shot, because casting Bestial Wrath gives you 2 charges of Barb Shot. So we want to get our Stacks of Frenzy up to 2 before we cast our Bestial Wrath. And sometimes you can get it up to 3 stacks, but a lot of times you actually just gonna want to cast Bestial Wrath just for that damage boost. But I'm gonna show you this as if we're going straight into a big burst damage rotation. All right, so it's gonna look a little something like this. First thing we want to do, get our dots on the enemy. So we're going to cast Barb Shot to get our Frenzy up. We're going to cast Bloodshed. Okay, we're going to throw a Kill Command, Cobra Shot. We're going to refresh our Frenzy. And now that we're out of Barb Shot, we're going to cast our Bestial Wrath. Maintain those Frenzy stacks. Right? And that's basically it, guys. That's basically it. You want to use Kill Command whenever you can. You don't want to use Barb Shot until you're about to be out of Frenzy. You don't want to use your Bestial Wrath if you already have 2 Barb Shot charges. And yeah, so for single target, that's basically it, guys. Now for AoE, it's going to be a little bit different. And for this rotation, we're going to assume that you're using the Soulforge Embers Legendary. If you're not using the Soulforge Embers Legendary, don't worry about this first part. And it's also going to assume that you're taking Night Fae. So basically what we're going to do is we're going to throw up our 2 major AoEs. And we're going to swap out Cobra Shot for Multi-Shot. And that's going to trigger Beast Cleave. It's going to hit more than one enemy. All in all, it's just going to be a great increase in your overall damage output if you're hitting enough targets. So our AoE damage rotation is going to look a little something like this. Tar Trap. Immediately into a flare. Then we're going to cast our Wild Spirits. We're going to cast Barb Shot for Frenzy. We're going to cast Bloodshed, Kill Command, Multi-Shot, Refresh Frenzy, go into Bestial Wrath. We're going to start plowing away with our Multi-Shots. Keeping that Frenzy up, making sure to use Kill Command. Now, if you're in a real burst situation, I like to use Aspect of the Wild to give me a little bit of an increase on my focus. But if you're really trying to burst the boss down, cast that Aspect of the Wild, dude. For real. And that's basically it. And now onto the PvP segment, aka my favorite segment, always. With PvP, you have a lot more variety of choices as far as pets go. What you want to pay attention to, and it's also not as important to take an exotic pet in PvP. What you're mainly looking for is the combination of your pet spec. Remember, that's Cunning, Ferocity, and Tenacity, combined with the pet's family ability that it comes with. So the 2 pet specs I would recommend taking in PvP is going to be Cunning and Ferocity, and here's why. For Cunning, think about it. PvP is a very CC heavy place. That Master's Call ability, allowing you to get out of roots and snares, will save your ass in a lot of situations. And as far as pathfinding, with the plus 8% movement speed, I mean, hunters are already pretty mobile, and I think that anything that we can do to enhance that and use that to our advantage is going to be very beneficial. Now, why you would want to take Ferocity, mainly it's going to be for that 10% leech. Something to know about Ferocity pets, though, is that the Primal Rage ability only benefits you in battlegrounds. So I would stick with Cunning in arenas unless you really want that leech. because of that, ferocity pets just don't offer you as much value in arenas as they do in a battleground. In a battleground, it's great because you get a fat haste boost for your entire team. You can definitely turn the tides of a battle. So I would say ferocity for battlegrounds or for your own survivability, and take cunning if you're good on survivability and really want to just ninja the hell around the map. And so you're going to want to combine these two with one of two pet family abilities. The first one being Mortal Wounds. Now, if you don't know about Mortal Wounds, it says grievously wounds the target, reducing the effectiveness of any healing received for 10 seconds. Now it's on a 6-second cooldown. So if you let your pet auto-cast this, your enemy is going to be under the Mortal Wounds debuff the entire time. And against enemy players, that's a 25% reduction in healing received. Naturally, this is going to be beneficial whether you're in an arena or whether you're in a battleground. Again, just depending on what your kit needs and which of the two, PvP environments that you're playing in is going to determine whether you take cunning for the mobility or ferocity for the offensive and defensive utility. The other pet family ability, or special ability, I guess, is going to be the slow ability. This reduces the movement speed of your opponents by 50% for 6 seconds. Now this one's on a 10-second cooldown. So your enemy's not going to be slowed the entire time if you let your pet autocast this. If the pet AI was perfect, they would be slowed 60% of the time. The pet AI is not perfect, so we'll go ahead and round down and say that with this ability, your enemy's going to be slowed 50% of the time, down to a 50% movement speed. Now, if you're in an arena, you're playing twos or something, and there's no healers on the other team, it's not really that beneficial for you to take Mortal Wounds, then you're going to want to take a pet with the slow ability. Now, as BMs, this is great because it's going to help us keep distance from our targets, especially against melee DPS. And overall, it's just going to be a nice, consistent CC to have on the enemy that, quite frankly, is extremely frustrating. Now again, there's going to be a couple different ways to look at our talents, and it's going to be based off of what pet spec we're taking. If we're not taking a pet in the ferocity pet family, if we're going with cunning, it is absolutely worth taking animal companion just for that increase in DPS, as well as a little bit of utility, like if your enemy CCs one of your pets, your other pet can still continue to do damage. However, if you're running a ferocity pet and your primary goal is survivability, I would recommend going with Killer Instinct instead. Again, with Animal Companion, each of our pets individually get nerfed, and that does include your pet family passives, i.e. that Juicy Leech. But with Killer Instinct, Kill Command deals 50% increased damage against enemies below 35% health, which is really going to be great for, finishing off enemies quickly that might be trying to heal themselves or that might have incoming healing. Now, a lot of people would recommend Chimera Shot in the second row, and I would too, absolutely. Not only is it a good damage dealer that's going to hit multiple targets, but it also is going to generate 10 focus for you, which if you've played BM for a while, you'll know that eventually there comes a point in your rotation where you just run out of focus and there's not much you can do. So Chimera Shot's definitely good in that situation. I still run Scent of Blood because for me personally, I would rather have my Bestial Wrath up more often. Now for the level 30 row, again, you can take Natural Mending, but I would absolutely recommend Camouflage. Not just because it gives you a great utility. I mean, you can't underestimate the power of turning invisible. You can get great openers on your enemy. But not only that, the Camouflage ability, while you're invis, you will heal for 2% of your max health every second. And you're stealth for 1 minute. So if you stay stealth the whole time, you will get yourself back up to max health, which absolutely cannot be underestimated. Next, in the level 35 row, I'm going to recommend Murderer Crows for you. This is just going to add a lot of pressure to your burst rotation compared to Thrill of the Hunt that we took in PvE, which is better for your sustain. Murderer Crows is going to be better for your burst. In the level 40 row, it's going to boil down to whether you want to be able to get out of CCs or whether you want to CC your enemy. So I take Post Haste, not only because it gives you a little bit of a speed boost after you disengage, but you can also get out of those roots and snares. And Binding Shot's a ground target ability where you can tether your enemies to the floor, basically. So it's just up to personal play style here. Next, we're going to take Stomp. This is going to add a lot more damage, basically to your Barbed Shot, not directly coming from your Barbed Shot. So what happens is your pet stomps the ground when you cast Barbed Shot, which is going to deal damage to all nearby enemies. Now, something important to keep in mind when you're doing PvP, if you have an enemy frost trapped and you cast Barbed Shot on a different nearby enemy, the Stomp is very likely to break the CC of the enemy that you have frost trapped. So just be careful while you're using this ability. And then Aspect of the Beast. Once again, increasing the damage and healing of your pet's abilities by 30%, as well as increasing the effectiveness of your Predator's Thirst, Endurance Training, and Pathfinding passives. So if you're taking Cunning, you're not just getting an 8% movement speed boost, you're getting a 12% movement speed boost. If you're taking ferocity, you're not just getting 10% leech, you're getting 15% leech. Not to mention that your pet's going to be doing way more damage. So moving over to the PvP talents. The ones that I would recommend for Arena are Roar of Sacrifice, Wild Protector, and Survival Tactics. Roar of Sacrifice is basically going to tell your pet to go take some damage for you or for your teammate. It stops you or your teammate from being able to be crit, but your pets take 20% of all the damage that you take as well. And then Wild Protector, same type of thing. Your pet protects allies within 8 yards, reducing damage taken by 10%. This is great if you have a melee DPS on your team, and you know your teammate and your pet are just shredding the enemy. You can cast Wild Protector, and that's going to put a good defensive buff on your teammate. And then lastly, Survival Tactics says Feign Death dispels all harmful magical effects and reduces damage taken by 90% for 1.5 seconds. So for me, in PvP, I like to use Feign Death as an interrupt. Say a mage is casting a greater pyro at me, I can Feign Death and it's going to interrupt their cast because obviously they can't cast when they're not targeting anything, right? This gives you just a little bit of extra security. Sometimes you don't Feign Death in time and they still get that ability off. Literally reduces 90% of the damage you take for 1.5 seconds. And it also gets rid of those harmful magical effects. This is just all in all a great defensive cooldown. Now, if you're doing battlegrounds, it's going to look a little bit different for PvP talents. I would really recommend taking Dire Beast Basilisk. I guarantee some people are going to laugh at this. It summons a big, slow-moving basilisk for 30 seconds, and it literally says that attacks the target for heavy damage. What I like to do is I like to stun the enemy, cast a basilisk on them, slow them, and the basilisk will just eat them up. Or you could even take this in arenas and just have your teammate try to keep the enemy, if you're going against like a melee DPS, try to keep the enemy near your basilisk and they will just get shredded. Another good one for battlegrounds is High Explosive Trap. It's basically a boop trap. You throw it down on the ground and when they trigger it, they go flying in the opposite direction. You can send people flying off cliffs. You can keep people off of the objective. It's just overall a really great utility to have. And then again, I still would recommend taking Survival Tactics because that Feign Death buff is just absolutely insane. So for PvP, your best Covenant choice is going to be Kyrian. So you're going to want to run Pelagos, and this is the path that you want to take if you're trying to optimize your loadout. The conduits here from top to bottom will be Tactical Retreat in the Finesse slot, Rejuvenating Wind in the Endurance slot, Enfeebled Mark in the Potency slot, and then a Reversal of Fortune in your second Finesse slot. What this pathway is going to do is just give you a little bit of damage resistance. It's going to buff the damage of your pets, gives you a little bit of CC utility with your disengage, and it's going to buff 2 of your Covenant abilities, being File of Serenity, as well as your Resonating Arrow. But here's the sleeper option for a PvP Covenant, Venthyr. Now before you go raising your fists, if you didn't know, Flayed Shot just got a massive buff. Flayed Shot, for those who don't remember, is the Venthyr Hunter ability, which applies a bleed to the target, and for every tick of damage, you get a chance to proc a free kill shot. Before, it had a 14-second duration. Now, it has an 18-second duration. Before, it cost 10 focus. Now, it costs no focus. Before, the kill command proc chance was 10%. Now it's 15%. This ability gets even better the higher your haste is because you get more ticks of damage and therefore more chances to proc kill shot. Trust me, I've seen people get 3 kill shot procs out of 1 Flayed Shot, and in PvP, not only will that do massive burst damage, but even more so, no one will see it coming. I feel like we're going to see a lot of Venthyr Hunters going forward, and to be honest, I don't know if I love it or if I'm scared. For your PvP legendaries, you want to take either Craven Stratagem or, and forgive me for my pronunciations, Kapla Eredun War Order. Craven Stratagem is nice. It says Feign Death cooldown reduced by 15 seconds, and Feign Death now removes most negative status effects from yourself. So this is a great legendary to have because what it'll do is it'll free up a PvP talent slot, because remember we took that PvP talent for arenas and for battlegrounds that buffs your Feign Death. Now you don't have to take that. It's going to free up that slot for you. The only thing in this case, it doesn't give you that emergency 90% damage reduction like you would get with the talent. The other option, like I said, is the Kapla Eredun War Order. It says Barb Shot deals 10% increased damage, and applying Barb Shot now also resets the cooldown of Kill Command. So you're going to get a lot more Kill Commands. And if you remember when we refer back to the rotation, Kill Command was one of our main damage dealers. Not to mention that we're already going to be casting a ton of Barb Shots to get our Bestial Wrath back. this is also gonna help us reset kill command instead of having to spam our Cobra shot. So for PvP, stat priority is going to be a little bit different. It's going to be agility, mastery, versatility, haste, and critical strike, with agility being most important. Now you can swap around mastery and versatility. You can even bump haste up one. Again, it's going to be more important to have a larger number of stats rather than more balanced stats. But mastery basically increases the damage that your pets deal. And then agility is going to increase your overall damage output and survivability. Versatility is pretty simple. Basically, for every point you get a little bit more damage and a little bit more defense. And it's just a straight line, so the more versatility you have, it just kind of translates pretty simply. Now, if we're talking about trinkets, the number one that you're going to want to have is the Sinful Gladiator's Medallion. This is the ultimate get out of a CC trinket. Removes all movement impairing effects. And the only other thing, now there's trinkets for many different things that you can get from the PvP vendors, or even from just playing PvP. Some will increase your primary stats, some will increase your maximum health, some will give you a haste boost. What's important is that you're using 2 PvP trinkets, because as it says on the bottom here, it says 2 set the damage and healing benefit of versatility is increased by 40% when in arenas, battlegrounds, and war mode. This is the way Blizzard kind of tried to handle PvP as far as trinkets go. And not to mention, our PvE trinkets did get nerfed when used in a competitive PvP scenario. So when you're looking at trinkets for PvP, guys, it's just important that you have a Sinful Gladiator's Medallion and another Sinful Gladiator's trinket of your choice, depending on what kind of play style that you have. Right now, though, Sinful Gladiator's Emblem is absolutely dominating the PvP scene. It gives you a massive increase in health for 20 full seconds. It is, in and of itself, a powerful defensive cooldown. So if I had to recommend a trinket combo for PvP, it's going to be Sinful Gladiator's Medallion and Sinful Gladiator's Emblem. So for PvP, our enchants and our gems are going to look a little something like this. On our boots, we want to put Eternal Agility. On our cloak, we want to put Soul Vitality. On our chest, we want to put Eternal Stats. And on our ring, we're going to use Tenet of Versatility. So pretty similar to the PvE enchants as far as armor goes. Except for our ring, we're going to spec into Versatility. For our weapon enchant, it's going to be the same. The Infragreen Reflex Sight, increasing that haste by a significant portion. Definitely going to be useful in a PvP type situation. And if you have any gear with gem slots, you're going to put in the Versatile Jewel Cluster to boost that versatility as well. Alright, so I'll show you a quick PvP rotation for you. Alright guys, so here we are in Orgrimmar, because I had to turn war mode on, so I can show you the PvP rotation with the PvP talents. Which, by the way, I'm going with the battleground version of these talents, just because it's a little bit more active, and it's the ones that I typically run. So the major difference here is that, first of all, we're swapping out Murder of Crows for Bloodshed as far as rotation goes, so that's going to be our main burst damage over time ability. And then we're throwing Chimera Shot in there as well. Now, I still, like I said, I run Scent of Blood still in PvP. I'm going to show you with Chimera Shot because a lot of people choose to go this route. Not only for the damage that it causes, but also for the focus that it generates. So that's going to change up our rotation a little bit, because when we cast our Bestial Wrath, we're not going to get 2 charges of Barb Shot again. So it's not going to be as easy to maintain those stacks of Frenzy. So you're going to want to keep an eye on that a lot closer than you were in PvP, because you're not going to be having so many barb shots up, and you're not going to be having your Bestial Wrath up so frequently. So that's just something to keep in mind. So the rotation is going to look a little something like this. First thing we want to do, get our dots on the enemy. Now, since we're not getting 2 extra charges of barb shot when we use Bestial Wrath, if you're going straight into your burst, it is okay to use your Bestial Wrath if you already have 2 charges of barb shot. And so it'll look a little something like this. Barb shot for our frenzy. Murder of Crows, kill command. Actually, we can go straight into our Bestial Wrath. Refresh that frenzy with Barb Shot again. Now, if you want to get the most use out of your Dire Beast Basilisk, which is this big boy coming up, you want to stun your enemy so that he has time to catch up. Now, you can see here, I don't know if you saw it, but we ran out of our frenzy because we couldn't refresh it with our Bestial Wrath. But the main rotation is basically the same. Now, you want to use your traps accordingly. Throw your high explosive trap if the enemy's on a cliff. It'll go ahead and send them flying into the distance. Again, if you're fighting multiple targets, you're going to want to use your multi-shot. If you're running low on focus, you can either use Aspect of the Wild like that, which gives you a little bit of an offensive buff. Or we can use our Chimera Shot, which, as you saw, just hit both of those targets. Keep that frenzy up. trap for an example there. And then back onto our Murderer Crows if we're ready to go for our burst again. And that's basically how it works, guys. That is basically how it works. Oh, and if you're using the Soulforge Embers legendary, obviously, throw that flare over the top to get some nice juicy damage over time. And it's just trying to keep some as much uptime on your Beast of Wrath as you possibly can. And making sure that you're keeping your frenzy stacks up. All right, lastly, when we're playing solo, now this is mainly going to be your BFA dungeons. If you're doing that by yourself, this is going to be your solo Torghast. This is going to be your questing. This is going to be for any time when you don't have basically a tank and a healer to assist you. You're out there alone wolfing it. The pet that you want to take in this situation, undoubtedly, without argument, is the Cleft Hoof. And here's why. Because your pet's going to be doing the tanking for you. You want a pet that's going to have absolutely no problem staying alive under any circumstances. And that's what the Cleft Hoofs have to offer. First of all, they're in the Ferocity Pet spec, granting you Predator's Thirst. That's that 10% leech. And then the Primal Rage ability, increasing your haste by 30% for 40 seconds. Not only is it going to give you a fat damage boost, but since you're doing more damage, you're gonna get more healing with that leech. Okay, the second thing contributing to the Cleft Hoof's badassness, the Thick Hide ability. When falling below 40% health, the Cleft Hoof will automatically grant 60% reduced incoming damage for itself. So if your pet starts to get too low on health, boom, it's gonna get a massive defensive buff. And the third thing contributing to the absolute beastly tankiness of this pet is the Blood of the Rhino exotic ability. It says the Cleft Hoof has 10% additional armor and increases the effectiveness of any healing received by 20%. This is going to make your mend pet so much more valuable. And keep in mind, you get leech off of your mend pet too. So if you're healing your pet, that counts as leech and you're also going to get healed, you know, for 10% or whatever. Not to mention the pet having 10% additional armor. I'm telling you guys, if you're soloing, take a Cleft Hoof, don't argue with me. Now our talents when we're soloing is going to look a little something like this. Kind of a mixture between our PvE and our PvP talents, essentially. We're taking Killer Instinct because, again, we want to maximize the potential of our leech. We don't want to nerf our leech with the Animal Companion talent, right? So we're going to take one pet. It's just going to be that singular Cleft Hoof. Next, we have Scent of Blood to keep your rotation flowing. We are going to take Camouflage instead of Natural Mending because when we're solo, we're going to want to sneak around as many obstacles as we can. The goal is to continue forward and not necessarily just to kill everything in your path. So if you're able to skip mobs, by all means do it. And again, like I said, while you're camouflaged, you are going to be healing. So instead of waiting for your health to go back up or having to use a consumable or even worse, using your exhilaration, you can just camouflage and get yourself back up to full health before your next fight. We're going to take Thrill of the Hunt instead of Murder of Crows. So in PvP, we took Camouflage, and then in PvE, we took Thrill of the Hunt. Now, when we're soloing, we're going to take Camouflage and Thrill of the Hunt. There's just kind of a combination of the two schools of thought as far as talent selection goes. Then we have Post Haste Stomp. An aspect of the beast is a very, very important one when we're soloing because it increases the effectiveness of our Predator's Thirst by 50%. So we're not getting 10% leech, we're getting 15% leech. And that's helping you and your pet stay alive. The goal here, guys, is survivability. You're going to be able to take down the enemies. It might take a little bit longer, but we're speccing to be able to stay alive. Now, when we're talking Covenants and Soulbinds for soloing, it's going to be the exact same as our PvE Soulbinds. Going back to Night Fae, using Nia, I'll throw it back up on the screen for you. It's that same path. I suppose, unless you're doing like solo world PvP, that's a little bit too specific for this video. But if you're doing solo world PvP, you could definitely take Kyrian and go the PvP route. In which case, I might also advise taking a Pterodax pet because of the slow fall ability that it gives you, just going to help in that world PvP type of environment. But getting back to the solo PvE, which is what we're trying to talk about here, it's going to go back to Night Fae. It's going to be Nia. It's going to be the same. And same thing goes for stat priority. Stat priority is going to be the exact same for PvE. I will throw it back up on the screen for you guys. Again, it's going to be agility on top, then haste, crit, mastery, and then versatility. And I'll say it again, it's more important to have more stats than balanced stats. Okay, we'll just put it that way. And honestly, your legendaries are going to be the same for PvE too. The good thing here is that since you're solo, you'll be the one in control of where the mobs are, so you can use the Soulforge Embers legendary and get a lot more out of it, which I do recommend. Now for our solo enchants and our solo gems. It's going to look roughly the same as our PvE enchants and gems. On our chest, we want to enchant with eternal stats. On our boots, we want to enchant with eternal agility. On our ring, we're going to use tentative haste. And again, on your weapon, it's going to be the infragreen reflex sight. However, one thing that is going to change is our cloak. What we want to do here is use enchant cloak fortified leech. Now, I doubt a lot of you are actually gonna go so far as to enchant and to gem your gear for solo content. If there are some really dedicated solo players out there, I would highly recommend this, just to increase that overall survivability and to stack some extra leech on top of the leech that we're getting from our ferocity pet. So here's the thing, guys. We're basically modifying our PvE build that we talked about in the beginning of this video, and we're changing it up just a little bit for our own survivability. And those changes, again, are mainly going to occur with the pets that we select. Again, we're going Cleft Hoof over Spirit Beast, as well as the talents that we're picking. Now, another thing that is going to get affected if you're solo is your rotation. Not by much, but let me show you. So here we are on Zuldazar, because why the hell not? But actually it's good because these training dummies here will do damage to our pet. And that's going to be good because I can highlight the importance of maintaining your mend pet. When you're soloing, it's one of the most important things in your rotation, matter of fact. So remember, these are the talents that we're looking at. We went back to Scent of Blood. So again, we're not going to want to use our Bistro Wrath unless we are out of barb shot charges. Or unless we're in an emergency, we need a really big and immediate damage boost. But ideally, you don't use your Bistro Wrath until you're out of barb shot when you're taking this talent. We also want Aspect of the Beast instead of Bloodshed, just because you're going to have so many things to manage, and in my opinion, it's going to be better for your solo experience and success if you are taking a passive in this talent tree, and it's going to do roughly the same amount of damage, so it's still good. So I'll showcase you the AoE. Now, keep in mind, again, this is going to assume that you're using Soulforge Embers, so it's going to look like this. Tar Trap. Immediately into a flare again. My Wild Spirits is down, it's alright. We're going to go into the rotation. Barb Shot. Got our Cobra Shot. Now look, my pets, I already forgot about it. My pet's trying to die. Mend Pet. Always keep your Mend Pet up. Go back into Bistro Wrath. Here we go with our Wild Spirits. Maintain our Frenzy. Use Kill Command whenever you can. And there goes the pet. So literally, you want to keep your mend pet up at all times. Okay? For real. Mend pet, look at this. Heals your pet for 50% of its total health over 10 seconds on a 10-second cooldown. You need to be keeping this up at all times so that your pet is continually healing. That leech is not going to be enough if you pull too big of a mob or if you're going up against a raid boss training dummy. So try it again, and this time we're actually going to open up with our mend pet. And I actually forgot to tell you something, and this is very important. Your misdirection. This ability here that I have on this weird add-on, I'll put a link in the description. Misdirection. Now, I'll put a macro up on the screen for you because it is important to be able to instantly put all of your aggro onto your pet. Now, I'll read you what it says. It says, misdirects all threat you cause to the targeted party or raid member, beginning with your next attack within 30 seconds and lasting for 8 seconds. So you basically have an 8-second window between when you misdirect. You're going to hit all the enemies that you can, or at least all the enemies that you think your pet can pull. And anybody that you damage, they're going to start attacking your pet and not you. Now, if you end up in an emergency situation where you end up pulling some aggro, and you have too many things to maintain, and you're afraid you're going to die, you do have a safety net with your feigned death. Obviously, your enemies aren't going to target you if they think you're dead. They will immediately start attacking your pet. But just beware, again, to keep that mend pet up at all times. So it'll look like this. Misdirect, mend pet, then we're going to throw the tar trap, then we're going to go into flare, and then we're going to go into wild spirits, and then we're going to cast our barb shot. Now our mend pet's back up, we're going to use that. I used Bistro Wrath too early. Remember, you're supposed to wait until you have 2 charges. That was my mistake. But it's just like that, guys. Now our mend pet's back up. It's literally every 10 seconds, so you're going to want to keep a close eye on it. Again, if you're going up against multiple targets, There's not multiple targets here, but you're going to want to swap out your Cobra Shot for your multi-shot. Start running out of focus, cast Aspect of the Wild. Also gives you a little bit of a damage boost. And I stopped maintaining my mend pet just to talk about a couple things, and my pet died here. And that's not normal. These, like I said, these training dummies do an insane amount of damage. But this is what you're looking at, guys, for your solo rotation. Most important things: misdirect, feign death, and for the love of God, use your mend pet. For those of you who made it to the end of the video, I appreciate you so much. I really didn't realize how much work this video would be to put together, but I'm glad I did it, and I hope you are too. Remember to like and subscribe if you liked what you saw here and you want to see another video next week. And until then, I'm Blue Monkey, and I'll talk to you soon. Peace.